Yom everybody. Yom Tov. I'm going to tell you the room and Chassidus without Chassidus. So to begin with, few of the minhagim of Minhag Chassidim. You see him on the Sefta, you see him on the Tanya. We'll go straight to the Farbrengs. As a young child, I once heard that the Rebbeim start making hachanas for Yudtes Kislev, Chayel. It always happened to me interesting. The Rebbe Shemaisis 3 months before. I have to say that I met a miniature Rebbe. His name is Abi Dagan. 20 months ago, they were asking, "What's the Zayin Yudtes Kislev?" Summertime is asking me after Chapel, "What's the Zayin Yudtes Kislev?" So I want to thank Abi, this younger man. Hope you didn't hear. You heard? You heard? Hi. This younger man. Time. So, Shekoyach.
5 minutes.
I have one mic. Now I have a mic. During Shabbat comes your mic. Anyway, so Shekoyach and they will on the bench. Keep it up. And the schus is still available for everybody who wants to start it. Baruch Hashem. Siddish businessman, one of Farbrengs to be Yad HaMelech, and today the Dazazain, and when they want to approach me or Abdi, Shul's Cash App, PayPal, Gesundheit, the English eventual, Aleph Tazak. The Siyum is make the thing is make a Siyum. And the Rosh Hashanah, so I'd like to make a Siyum on the Sechtes Rosh Hashanah. The end of the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Elazar tells us, first a person should have his tefillah orderly, meaning the suddha in his head, clear and then daven. But how do you follow? Amar Rabba, Daven Milsa Rabbi Elazar makes sense. The Baruch Hashem, keeper, B'Shalprakim, and the one that, not the regular davenings, because those are not accustomed in your mind, so you should clarify that not everybody has third birthdays. But the regular davening every single, the whole year, because everybody knows it. Mars is Aini, but how could that be? Rabbi Yehuda himself, we know for a fact, he would watch him, the Sadr Tzloisim with Masali, the would watch him. He would Masali daven first, and then he would daven. The Gemara says, Shiny Rabbi Yehuda, you can't be the Raya of Rabbi Yehuda, he was one of those Chachamim that was Nadasim and Nosam. He wasn't a simple Hebrew. Even in the Tlosim, Yoyim and Tlosim HaMetzali, he would daven only Tarichas, I mean, say the basics every day, but Tarichas, the proper davening once a month. For him, it's the Prakim Damin. One will conclude by saying, we would say that the people that are out there in the field, they're really partner from, you have to be there early in the morning, so they're really partner, so from Damin, you have that in mind. Of course, those that hang around the city, Mara says, what kind of ice? Those that are in the cities, they have beyond their circumstances, beyond them. But those that are here, they should do better, should have it properly. You're standing behind the koinim. Hello, final maskal in the Gemara is those that are outside, they're one to be down. I will be here, boy, Hadim alone. Yom Tov, Kislev, the second Seshon. I know the Yom Tov, the second Seshon. I know the Seshon, I know. I know the Seshon, I know. I know the Seshon, I
Let's get the show on the road.
Honor Harab Hamilton, the Yeshiva, with the Seal Matanya.
Chaim.
I want to see what you have to say.
In the last period, Tanya, our Rebbe is talking about the union from the daven, how we have to daven with kavone and ruhigkeit, not to have, and we shouldn't talk, we shouldn't daven. And our Rebbe is finishing. He says we should learn Shabbos. We should learn the Yuchas Shabbos to know. We should learn the Yuchas Shabbos, and then our Rebbe says, we shouldn't talk Shabbos, Chas v'Sholem, Asicha b'Teila, not in Yonim from Teila. Every mitzvah has the pnimis, inner opinion from the mitzvah, and chitzenis the mitzvah. Chitzenis ma Shabbos u'shvisem asir gashmis. Chitzenis on Shabbos is we shouldn't do any malocha Shabbos. We should rest. Meisha Shabbos Hashem asir shomayim v'oretz gashmi. Just like Hashem was Shabbos and he didn't create the world during the Shabbos, that is chitzenis HaShabbos. Pnimis HaShabbos he hakavone b'tfilas HaShabbos. Shabbos to have more kavone when we daven with Talmud Torah and to learn more Shabbos. L'dovko b'Hashem Echad, to get connected with Hashem Echad. Mishekosu Shabbos l'Hashem Elokecha. The Shabbos is for God, you God. It means it's the time that we should get more connected with the Mevash. Zui b'chines zocher. The Shabbos it says in the Aseres HaDibros zocher, and the second one said shomer. So zocher is we should remember learning Torah. B'chines shomer b'pnimius. What is the meaning for shomer? Yashvise midiburim gashmi. We shouldn't talk. Stam the read the gashmi zekedinyonim. Meisha shovas Hashem yud mamores. Just like Hashem was Shabbos, he didn't create the world with his mamores, yud mamores. Shenivra mamshayim v'oretz gashmim. Kizelu mazeh chulu. So Shabbos is a time that we should daven more, learn more, and not chas v'sholem talk more beteilim. That's what our Rebbe is finishing the time. In the middle we can stop this thing. So we need Shabbos rest in months. Okay, I'll just say about in Tanya.
But why the mic is not open?
That I heard from Mashpia Rabbi Shliach, he explained that the Rebbe in Tanya in Perik of Dalet is talking very strongly. We shouldn't talk in the middle of the davening. From Heidu till after Oleinu, we shouldn't talk. We shouldn't talk any Dvorim B'Teilem. And the Rebbe is giving a motion. There was a big king, a very important king, a very Choshever king, and usually the king is in his palace. The people can't see the greatness of the king, his honor. And the king wanted the people wanted so much to see him, so he gave out a call. He said that one day he's going to make a parade in the town, and everybody will be able to see him. So the people got so excited and started to prepare themselves, and they stood by the sides of the street. Everybody wanted to be able to take a look on the greatness of the king. So the Rabbi says, and if over there will be a man who is not going to look on the king, he'll talk with his friend. And not only he shows he's a fool, he could use up the time to look on the king, such a great king, and he is talking with his friend. And the Rabbi said, it's not only that, it's also a Meir B'Malchus. The Rabbi is talking about it very strongly, very sharp, against that talking in the middle of the davening. Now, Chassidish shul on the walls used to be not a shal, the whole perek, a copy, was attached to the walls. You should know not to talk in the middle of the davening from Heidu till after Oleinu. So the Mashpia, Shliach, explained that the test Kislev, what was the test Kislev? The Mitzvah Noteres Achsides. Learn Timis Ateire before we didn't have it, but we had all Nigel in it. But test Kislev was the Mitzvah that Hashem gave us, like the Alter Rebbe asked them, the Mizricher Magid, and Hashem, what did they want from me? And he told them, because you may see the Sputzah. So the Alter Rebbe asked him, and after I'll go out, I'll get free. Should I continue? So they told him, yeah. Since he was in the jail, paid them his Mesiras Nefesh, that Milmailo, they gave us the matone from Limud from Mimis Ateiret. So how we have to show to Hashem how we appreciate that he gave us such a big matone. So you have to learn and finish the Alpiteros Achsides. If half a shoulder we're missing in that, so we're like the Alter Rebbe with the story with the king. He is giving us such a matone, and we're not showing how much we appreciate it. Hashem shall help the Kemzel from the Kislev take a highest, nafsheinu nitan lonu, to learn Nigel and Chassidus and davening and not talking in the davening, and we'll bring it to the Gula Mitzvah Shlema B'Korah Mamash.
You know the emo usually.
Time to the time. Maybe to bench all of us. Run the time to send you vision. I introduce Rabbi Carlebach from Jersey, Rutgers University. Shliach, Shliach for coming out, joining us. Sameach, Zikr, all the Haftarah that Rebbe said we're joining Simcha for every one of us. Thank you very much. Rabbi Yosef Carlebach.
Rabbi Yosef to everyone. Chaim, Shliach from the Kislev. And we should all accomplish what we need to accomplish on Yutas Kislev. We just heard from the Rosh Hashiva words that he chazed over from Rabbi Korf. I also want to thank the general manager over here, Avi Dagan. He's been really, he said he's working on it 3 months. For me, he's working on it 3 years. He's been calling very patiently, very nice, I must say. Not everyone is so patient, not everyone is so persistent. So, Baruch Hashem, I want to be a big Yashakayach. And Yutas Kislev is a Farbrengs, we all know. But Yutas Kislev is also supposed to do something to each and every one. In other words, we have to ask ourselves. What difference? Where am I after you, Kislev, as compared to before? Today, I had to come here from New Jersey. I didn't realize how bad the traffic would be. I didn't know, I'm not used to Connecticut. I thought only New Jersey and New York had bad highways. I learned it was on 95 for an extended period of time. But I was in the city today, and I wanted to just share a story. I live in a very poor community. It's called Deal, New Jersey. I live outside of Deal. I wish I lived in Deal. My daughter lives in Deal, my son-in-law. But in Deal, there's a very chashuv community, a Jewish community, the Syrian, Sephardic Jews. And everybody thinks of them, they have money. That's not what I'm talking about. They have something that we, Hasidim, should learn from. Especially when it comes to Kislev. And that is the emunus chachamim that they have. The belief that they have in a tzaddik, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable the belief that they have in a tzaddik. And I've seen this. I've seen it firsthand many times. And I want to share with you some of these things that I've seen. I brought once the mayor of Deal, to the Rebbe for dollars. And I said to the Rebbe, at that time he wasn't yet mayor, he was the commissioner. I said, Rebbe, this is the commissioner of Deal. And the Rebbe goes like this, no, big deal. This is what the Rebbe said. Big deal. Now, the Rebbe doesn't say words like this. The Rebbe is not trying to make people, feel good. This is the Lubavitch Rebbe. It's not a Polish Rebbe. And when the Rebbe says big deal, it's a big deal. One of these Sfadishim, a very close friend of mine, who was a single man, Rebbe, he's still single, and he had terrible, terrible problems with his father. He didn't get along with his father from childhood and onward. He didn't get along with his yeshiva. At the age of 12, he ran away from home. Syrian boy ran away from home. He left the United States. He went to Puerto Rico. Today, Puerto Rico has a CHABAD house. Those days, Puerto Rico had no CHABAD house, nothing. And he lived as a 12-year-old in Puerto Rico. He came back. His father put him into business, a huge business. And I got to his business and became a very, very big supporter. But he never got along with his father. His father and him never saw eye to eye, and his brother and him. And there were fights. There was stuff going on. It was terrible. For years and years and years and years. And one of the things I tried to do was to bring this boy to the Rebbe. To me, this meant a lot. Get him to come see, talk, communicate, somehow have a connection to the Rebbe. And it never worked out. Every time he made up, come, yeah, I'm coming, I go, I'll meet you on Kingston in Eastern Parkway at 3 o'clock, yeah. He doesn't show. Until Chav Vav Adar, Chav Shin Nun Beis. You know what that is. The last Sunday of Dallas. And that Sunday, for some reason, I was Baruch Hashem, was able to be there. Brought a few people, other stories for them. But this Syrian boy that was supposed to be there, that Sunday, promised me that he'll be there at 3 o'clock. I will see you, or meet you. He did not show up. I was very upset. You have to understand who this is. This is a boy who would end up marrying a shiksa, Syrian. He would end up having a shiksa child. He was a kohen. He was a bechor. You have to understand what's going on. So that's on one hand where we are, and on the other hand, he's coming to see the Rebbe, and he doesn't show. The next day was Monday. Everybody knows what Monday was. I was sitting in the Chabad, and those days were beepers before the cell phones. And the beepers, when something happened, nobody knew, but we know something happened. And so I decided I'm leaving Chabad, I'm going to head straight to Crown Heights. I don't know what happened, but I know I'm going out of Crown. I got into my car and driving towards Crown Heights. I happened to pass the store that this Syrian boy I knew would be in, one of the stores. So I ran into the store and I said to him, Chucky, where were you yesterday? He says, what's the matter? I said, Chucky, something happened. Something happened to the Rebbe. I don't know what happened, but I don't know if there'll be dollars again. This is what I thought. And as soon as he said to him, I said these words to him. He's on the shoulder. He says, Rabbi, thank God I didn't go yesterday. I looked at him like angry. What do you mean, thank God you didn't go? I don't know if there'll be another time for dollars. What do you mean, thank God you didn't go? How can you say those words? He says, Rabbi, you don't understand. I said, no, I don't understand. I'm getting angry. He says, Rabbi, you don't understand. I said, no, I don't understand. Explain it to me. He says, Rabbi, do you know what a Rebbe is? You know what the Rebbe does every time somebody goes to the Rebbe? The Rebbe takes away all his sins. Imagine if I went with all my sins to the Rebbe. The next day he got sick. He says, Kaparat Avonot, thank God it wasn't me. It wasn't me, whatever happened. This is what he said. And this is the way a person looked at going to the Rebbe. We never went. So Yutas Kislev means that we have a chance now to approach the Rebbe. We have a chance now to approach the Alter Rebbe. We have a chance now to approach the Magni. This whole business of these days are meant to really give us some type of an approach. How do we enter over there? And that's what Yutas Kislev is meant to accomplish. So yes, we learn all the Maimorim, we learn all the Sikhs and we Farbrengs and so on. But the whole purpose of this is somehow something's supposed to change in ourselves. So if something changes, you came to Yutas Kislev, you have a Yutas Kislev, you go on from there. If you're still the same after Yutas Kislev, then always Yutas Kislev. So as we're in the middle of Yutas Kislev, it's time simply for everyone, every person, to think a little bit and say, if I had a chance now, I remember Shabbos, Farbrengs every single year, every single Motzei, they would speak about one thing in the Farbrengs. We've always mentioned chitas in the Farbrengs. The biggest chitas of the year usually is the day of Simchas Torah. You know that, yes? You got to finish and you got to start depending on what day of the week it is. It's a huge chitas. I remember sitting down in the bleachers. I was afraid to approach the Rebbe for Pesach Bracha because maybe the Rebbe will say, did you say chitas today? I just simple question, did you say chitas today? And what are you going to answer? So this is the idea. You can ask yourself, if the Rebbe is going to ask you, what happened today? What did you do today? Hopefully we can all give an answer. We can all give a good answer. And Farbrengs Yutas Kislev, Chaim U'Chaim.
Again, you want to shut it off?
What you doing?
If you want to.
One of the famous stories of this Kislev is a letter that the Alter Rebbe wrote, and he writes that he was in prison. It was on a Tuesday, same feast as this year. It was Yud Kislev, and the Alter Rebbe writes that he was saying that the Shir of Yom Shlishi of the third day, Pitul Nun Hey, he was saying the pasuk Pada B'Shalom Nafshi when they came in to the prison and they told the Alter Rebbe that he was totally free. Before he finished the pasuk of Pada B'Shalom Nafshi, he was already free. This is the Alter Rebbe writes in his letter. The Rebbe, interestingly, writes there's a connection between the fact that it is Tuesday, the fact that the Alter Rebbe writes that it's Yud Tes Kislev, the fact that the Rebbe says that he uses these psukim, this pasuk in his letter. And the Rebbe writes that Yud Tes, what is the significance of Yud Tes? Does anybody know the significance of Yud Tes? It is the milui of Shem Havaya. You take Yud Kevav Hey, Yud and Hey, and then Vav, and then another Hey, you get 26. But if you write out the Yud in the whole, the milui, you write Yud Vav Dalet, and Hey, you write Hey Aleph, and Vav and Hey, you add 19 to the word of 20, to the number of 26. You get to the number together of 45, it's a Shema, and so on. The Rebbe explains that this is the idea of the milui of Yud Kevov. It comes out of the idea of Yud Tes in number 19. The Rebbe explains that why do we have to change the milui? Why do you have to change the letter from Yud to Yud Vav Dalet? When you're learning with another person, you cannot say the sounds of the letters. You have to say, this is a Yud. When you're thinking of it yourself, you don't think of it, Yud Vav Dalet. It's Yud. You see the letter Yud, that's all it is. When you're explaining it to someone else, you have to say, this is a Yud, this is an Aleph. When a person sees it for himself, they don't need to say, they just say, or yeah, or whatever it should be. On one hand, this idea of milui is when you want to bring the message to another person, but if you're keeping the message for yourself, you don't need to have this milui. So on one hand, milui means that you're stepping down from the origin, from the original letter. But on the other hand, milui has the exact opposite types, exact opposite explanation. And that is milui sometimes when a Rebbe wants to give an idea over to a Talmud. The Rebbe knows what he wants to give over to the Talmud. And the Rebbe wants to give over the deepest ideas to the Talmud. But he can't. The Talmud is not able to accept it. The Talmud is not capable of accepting it. So the Rebbe goes through a whole way of explaining what he wants. And after he explains everything to the Talmud, then the Talmud picks up what the Rebbe originally wanted. So here, milui doesn't mean necessarily it's a step down, but in essence, it's taking the Talmud a tremendous step up. And that's the idea of Yud Tes, the Rebbe writes. That Yud Tes Kislev, the chidush of Yud Tes Kislev, the greatness of Yud Tes Kislev, was that the Alter Rebbe was able to take the highest ideas in Torah, the highest ideas of the Eibusher, and bring it down to the most regular of people. That's what the Levi Badishavus said when he saw the Sefer HaTanya. He said, it's a pelle, it's a wonder. And Yelumin, Azar Grisa Eibusher, he took a big Eibusher and was arranged in a plain sefer, put it into a little book. And this is what really the whole story, the whole story of CHABAD. If we think about what is the accomplishment of the Rebbe. The Rebbe is able to do things, the highest levels, but there are others that are able to do things on high levels, but they aren't able to bring it down to the levels of the people. The levels of simple people or regular people. And the Rebbe has this unique thing, and this is what the Rebbe gives us, this specialty of bringing it down. The Shalosh says that the Shabbos Parshas, when we read, every time you have a Yom Tov, the Parsha of the Shabbos around the Yom Tov is connected always to the Yom Tov. Every Yom Tov, he says, even if Yom Tov happened after Matan Torah, Chanukah happened after Matan Torah, Purim happened after Matan Torah. If you look into the parshas of around those Yom Tov, you'll see the Torah is connected to those Yom Tov. So similarly, this Kislev is connected to the Parsha Vayishlach, Parsha Vayishlach, and the Maggid said, Parsha Vayishlach, the last Vayishlach of his life, which was the Exec of the Maggid, the Yom HaElul of the Maggid, is Yud Tes Kislev, and 26 years later, exactly, Al-Zeb will go out of prison. So in that last Shabbos of the Maggid, Parsha Vayishlach, the Maggid said, Vayishlach Yankiv Malachim. What does Rashi say? 2 words, one of the quickest, easiest Rashis to remember. Malachim Mamish. So the Maggid said, what's the Taich Malachim Mamish? Most of us Taich Malachim Mamish, real Malachim. So the Maggid said, the Mamish Kula Malachim Adedishim. Yaakov only sent the lowest level, the physical part, if such a thing is possible, by a malach. The mamish of the malachim adedishim, so to say. But the real malachim stayed by Yaakov. In order to accomplish dealing with Esau, Yaakov had to send malachim. But when he sent malachim, it's malachim mamish. He only sends the mamish of the malachim. This idea again. If we only realized that when we're sent out to do something, whoever sends each one of us, whoever calls us, each and every person is shluchim, and each person, doesn't matter where you are, really doesn't matter if you're official, if you get a paycheck from this organization or not, or you don't get a paycheck, or you could have gotten, or you should have gotten a paycheck. It doesn't mean nothing. Every one of us is a Shliach of the Rebbe. Some of us know it, some of us don't yet know it. But we don't realize how many times in a day you have a chance to bring this idea to fruition. How many times in a day you don't get it. And I think today, as we get much closer to Mashiach, part of bringing Mashiach into the world is for each person to realize that they have to bring the ideas down into this world and into their world. I had this young son that's coming up. I had my wealthiest really. He was a man that at the end of his life put on film for 12 years. At the end of his life, he ate kosher for 6 years. And my beginning with him, my opening meeting with him was he had 2 security guards escort me out of his store. When I first went to see him, the first time I met him, he was an owner of a huge electronics store. And he had a mishagas, very interesting mishagas, that he didn't like rabbis, let's put it that way. He didn't like people asking him for money, for sure not. And he hated religion, any type of religion, Yiddishkeit for sure. And he used to stand, his office was a desk on a floor that was 4 feet above the floor level. So if you wanted to speak to me, you didn't have an appointment, you had to stand on the floor and look at him like this and say, hello, can I see you? You have to understand this mahalach of a person. He did this on purpose. He had a lot of shtick. He had a table in his office where he'd meet with people, and he had chairs around the table, and a chair has 4 legs with 4 wheels underneath. Understand? If he didn't like you, he gave you a chair that had 3 wheels and the 4 legs. So you're sitting there, your chair kept he understand, he didn't do this for no reason. He did it with a thing, with a husband. He knew exactly what he was doing. He built one of the biggest retail in the Northeast in electronics and so on. He was very interesting. So the first time I went to see him, I wanted, those days you may be too young to remember, there's a machine called a VCR. Those of you that were born before 2020 may know, those that you know what VCR is. So I wanted to get a VCR, so CHABAD would make a raffle with a VCR. So I go to a store and I didn't have an appointment, he wouldn't give me one. And I looked up at him and I said, he says, yeah, what do you want? I said, I want a VCR. He says, who are you? I said, CHABAD. He says, how much are you going to pay? I say, nothing. Security. 2 security agents come. They take me by both elbows and they escort me to the exit sign and they send me out of there. This was the first time we met.
First impression.
First impression, very important first impression. What do you do? So I called a friend of his who was in the electronics business, who knew him, who respected each other, and I said to his friend, I have to see this man, he's a very powerful big man, he's important. So his friend called him and he said, you know, I have a friend, he's a rabbi, CHABAD. He says, I know who he is. He came to my store, he wanted a VCR, I threw him out. I'm not interested in him. Tell him I'm not interested. He says, but he's a rabbi, he needs help. He says, okay, this is the deal. I will give him $5,000 over 5 years. On condition I don't see his face for 5 years. As long as he doesn't step foot into my store, for the next 5 years, every year you should send me an envelope and I'll send him $1,000. The minute I see his face, no more deal. He calls me back to Simcha, I got you $5,000. I had to accept his conditions. I had to stay away. I used to drive by his store. I couldn't go in, even for legitimate reasons. It would ruin the deal. After 2 years, the whole pasha happened. Start dreaming about a bigger building. The bigger building would require not hundreds of thousands, but millions and millions of dollars. I needed real money. And I decided to go back to it. But I can't go back. It's 2 years into the 5-year deal. So I called a friend. I said, call up the man, tell him we need to make a deal. I want to build a building, a dream. So he calls up. He says, what are you talking about? 5 years? It's 2 years. No deal. I'm not allowing. No, there's 5 years. And after 5 years, he says, no, the rabbi has a dream with a building, a big building. He says, I'm not interested. He says, but the rabbi has a dream. He says, okay, I'll tell you what. I'll make a new deal. For the next 5 years, I'll give him $25,000. I'll give him $5,000 a year, but for 5 years, I don't want to see him. This was the deal. And the man called me back, Simcha, I got you $25,000. This was the Kiddush HaShluchim. I got the call during the Kiddush HaShluchim, Tovshin days. And I said to the man, I don't want the money. I want the meeting. Tell him I'm not accepting. I want the meeting. Tell him to give me 10 minutes. He says, Rabbi, you're going to forgo 20? I said, yes. I want the meeting. So he called him back, and the man said, the rabbi doesn't want the money. He wants the meeting. I'll give him 10 minutes. But tell the rabbi this 10 minutes is going to cost him $25,000. He shouldn't dare ask me for money. I wrote a letter to the Rebbe that morning, I'll not forget. I wrote to the Rebbe, this is my, one chance in a lifetime. And if my dream ever should happen, I asked for a bracha to go and I left. Little did I know, you're too young to know what station wagons are. Anybody knows what station wagon? We had the old beaten up Chevy wagons, remember, with the dents in the back. This is a man that if he came into his parking lot with the wrong car, he already knew it. Interesting man. He had big problems. He had big hang-ups about different things. One thing is about the Hasidic drivers. There's all these mishigas, it's unbelievable. I can't tell you what kind of mishigas he had. And I grew up with a beaten station wagon. I didn't notice at the time. And I went to see him, and this other party was there in the room, Shas Mice, thank God. And we all got good chairs to sit on. And we sat down, and in 10 minutes into the meeting, he says, you're not so bad. You're not so bad. I'll give you the 25,000. And I didn't respond. He looks at me and says, you're not happy? So I said to him, I'll take the money on one condition. He says, you're making conditions with me? I said, listen to my condition. And I said, I'll take the money on the condition that you come to our dinner. And you're going to be the guest of honor at our dinner. And from that meeting until the dinner, this man gave $1 million to the first payment for the building of the CHABAD house. And by the end of his life, he had given $8.5 million to CHABAD house. But I want to share a story with him and the Rebbe. One of the biggest problems I had, it was terrible, was at that time, the Rebbe's stroke. And the Rebbe could not communicate the way we knew the Rebbe should. The Rebbe could normally, and here's a guy that I knew, the Rebbe would capture the man, capture him. The guy would become putty in the. And he saw the Rebbe once. We walked past the Rebbe's room one time, and that was it. He never engaged. He never had, it was all a davar ruchni between him and the Rebbe. It never happened because it was after the stroke. But I want to share a story between him and the Rebbe to again explain to you how the Rebbe does his work from all the way above to all the way below. Here's a man that sold 10% of all air conditioning units in the United States of America. In the California, in the West, they don't have window units because when you have hot temperatures, Florida, California, other parts of the country, you have to have central units. It doesn't make sense. But in the Northeast, sadly, the older buildings, people don't have air conditioners. They buy window units, big thing window units. If you go around, you'll see most of the air conditioners in the Northeast of the United States are window units. New construction, not, but all the apartment buildings, yes, you see window units everywhere. So he had big stores all over, and he purchased, the purchasing power that he had was 10% of all the window units in the United States of America. When did he buy? He couldn't buy in June, July, and August. You can't buy 10% of the air conditioning units in the United States. So he bought his units, he ordered them in December and January. How do you know what the temperature is going to be in June, July, when you're buying the units in December, January, February? But he got to know that there is a Rebbe, and the Rebbe has powers. So he started writing letters to the Rebbe, and I would give it to Rabbi Groner. He used to go into the Rebbe's room, and the Rebbe would nod his head. That's the way, that was the most I could do. But he connected. So the customers, I'd go to his office, he'd tell me what he wants, I'd write the letter, he reads it, he likes what he says, he'd sign his name, Laser Ben Fege, he would sign the letter, I'd bring it. He calls me up, this was the beginning of 1990, it was the beginning of 1993, and he says to me, I want this summer to be the hottest summer in the history of the United States. I'm buying a lot of air conditioning. He tells me, overwhelming. So I said to him, Les, you asked me to ask the Rebbe for bracha for this. It's not right. People, you have it. I'm not asking you. I'm not asking for your advice. The Rebbe is a tzaddik. I have a right to ask the Rebbe for what I want. He says, write the letter. He was a very tough man. So I wrote the letter, and I wrote, CHABAD Moshita. I own this and this company, and I purchased a lot of air conditioning. And I'm asking for bracha that this summer should be conducive to the sale of a lot of air conditioners. That's what I wrote. He reads the letter, he says, are you crazy? That's not what I asked for. Don't tell me how to word. I want you to write hot, hazy, and humid. Write it into the letter. Okay, you have no choice. Yeah, this is what a Jew is writing to the Rebbe. I'm only a secretary. I'm writing the transcribe. I'm asking for a bracha. Hot, hazy, and humid. This is good. Signs his name, Laser Ben Fege. I bring the letter. I should tell Rabbi Groner, the label, before you go in, I want you to read the letter to yourself. He reads his Pistum Sugar, you're crazy. I said, it's not me. It's my red. Rabbi Groner already had met this man. He knew the guy is certified. You know, he's what he is. He went into the Rebbe's room, the Rebbe nodded his head. Check it out, the hottest summer was that summer. We sold every unit. Every single unit. A year later, so this was the summer of 92. A year later was the summer of 93. He wrote in again. He said, this time I have to sell even more units. And by this, I know he was serious. Because he has a neshama, he's asking. And he told me, he says, if I give $1 million, it's stuck, but I have a right to ask. That's what he said. If I give 2 million, I have more rights. This is the way he looked at it. And the next summer was hotter than the first summer. And in Nun Dalet, he did not ask for the weather pattern rule. But both years, the Rebbe just nodded his head. And literally, the weather system of the Northeast changed. And he called me during the summer. He says, come quickly to my store. They couldn't take the units off the trucks. People were standing on the driveway of the trucks. Just give them to us, give them to us. They were like selling them off the trucks. That's how hot. So, and I tell you that from the highest level to the lowest level, there is a connection. Here's a man that eventually decided to put on film every day. Took a lot of work. He wasn't, the first time he put on film, he told me, I'll put on film, but you have to come to my house every morning at 6:30 and show me how. He lived in a beautiful home, beautiful, beautiful home. I went to his house every morning at 6:30. I didn't know at the time, I didn't know that I had an oil leak in my car. And he had a very nice, very beautiful driveway with these fancy bricks, very, very fancy bricks on the driveway. And my car left some shirayim, it left some oil on the entrance to his home. So the second day I came to put on film with him, as soon as I pulled up, the butler came running out of the house and he put like a diaper underneath my car. I got the message that either I stop bringing this car or I park on top of the driveway. I don't come below to, and we put on film every day. After like 6 years of putting on film, he called me up. He had then moved to Florida, tax reasons. He left New Jersey. And he found it to be as Yemamah. He has a very, very unique type of disease. His numbers were very high in this disease. And I had received many answers from the Rebbe that if a person has this disease, be very careful with what he eats. Here's a man that I knew what he ate. Every night of the week he went out. And he ate everything possible. Everything possible. Mamish, everything possible. And I knew this had to change. This had to change. And I knew as soon as I would mention kashrus to him, there's a good chance that would be the end of our relationship. He would not buy into it. How dare you? You're mixing into my family business, mixing into my life too much. So at that time, it's already 6 years after we knew each other, I went to the oil and asked for a bracha from the Rebbe the following day. I wrote to the Rebbe, I know what I have to do. I know what I have to say to him. I'm asking for a bracha that what I'm going to say to him should not ruin the relationship that we have. And I drove home. When I came home, I ordered the tickets to fly the next day to Florida. I called him up and I said, I'm coming to visit you tomorrow. He says, why are you coming? I said, what do you mean, why am I coming? You told me you're sick. You told me you're not well. I'm coming to speak to you. He says, why? He was very sharp man. He was far from a fool. I said, I want to speak. He says, you want to tell me what the Rebbe told you to tell me? These are his words. I said, yes. He says, you don't have to come to Florida. I know what the Rebbe wants. "Do you know what the Rebbe wants?" He says, "Yeah." I say, "What does the Rebbe want?" He says, "The Rebbe wants me to keep kosher." That's what he says. Right. So he says, but there has to be some, leeway here. So I said, "I'm coming to Florida. We'll make a deal. We'll make a contract. Everything then was business." So I go down to Florida and we sat down. We made a contract. Imam wrote a letter to the Rebbe. And the contract said, "I am now accepting on myself no more to eat chazer, no more to eat shellfish, no more to eat shrimp, no more to eat." He lists all the foods that he's not going to eat. Came to salad. A restaurant, he says, "Don't go there. Don't start up with me." I said, "I didn't put it into the letter. I'm not telling you about salad in a restaurant. But the list of all mamish sheifa things, chaz and so on, beef, all these things were on the list." Came with me to the oil, signed the contract, and we left. We went back to Florida. The next test he took, his numbers had disappeared. Literally. And he lived for 6 years with mamish no numbers. And after 6 years, he called me up and says, "I'm breaking the deal." I said, "How do you break a deal? You made a deal with the Rebbe. It's not a joke." He says, "There's no kosher." At that time, there were very few kosher restaurants in Florida. New York had. Now there's a lot more kosher restaurants. He said, "I can't go to the same restaurant every time, eat the same food, the salad, and this and that." And we went back on the deal. Within a few months, he left this world. But again, here you see, this is again, the highest of the high and the lowest of the low get together, and it works. And it works. We don't realize who we are. We don't realize our powers, who we're connected with. We don't. Last night I was at CHABAD house for the first time ever. We did a Yutas Kislev Farbrengs officially. We decided this time we're not calling the Hamish people together like we've done for years and years. We're going to make an official student program. Yutas Kislev, Alter Rebbe, come to the Yutas Kislev Farbrengs. We're going to make it not fancy, what is it called? No fluff. Every time to attract kids, you need to have fluff. We're going to make this Yutas Kislev. Last night, 100 kids showed up on campus. And we made an announcement. Boys sit here, girls sit here. It's a Farbrengs, it's not a program. The boys sat here, the girls sat there. I was sitting there, I'm there 43 years. I've never seen this. I've never seen what we call a Hasidic Farbrengs in the real sense on campus. And I said to her, I stood up, I was awakened by this. And I saw the power of Yutas Kislev. And I said to them, these are university students. These are not Hasidic people. Some have a background, some don't. I said, the Alter Rebbe is now in this room. This is what the Alter Rebbe went to prison for. This room here. And the Alter Rebbe is looking at you, 100 kids sitting here. And the Alter Rebbe is saying, whoever the Alter Rebbe speaks to, it was worth it. It was worth it. Hundreds of years later, there's 100 students sitting in a CHABAD house, Yutas Kislev Farbrengs, talking about the Alter Rebbe. I don't know how we, how we digest such a, we don't see it. We're so close that we don't see it sometimes. And it doesn't affect us. We become what's the word, immunized to realize what's going on in this world. So again, Yutas Kislev is meant, say a little l'chaim, and let it enter, let it penetrate, so that, again, Chav Kislev. One of the members of my shul called me this morning. He says, "Rabbi," he's at home davening. His daughter had an accident. She took away his car. He can't come to shul. No car. Is there tachnun today? I say, no. I texted, no. I said, and not tomorrow. He goes, I heard of your test. What's tomorrow? He goes, what's tomorrow? So I said, it's Chof. He says, what's Chof Kislev? He didn't know. So I said, when you come to Shul Shabbos, I'll tell you what Chof Kislev. I had also Chof Kislev. I had a Chof Kislev story. You know what Chof Kislev is, yes? Everybody here knows what Chof Kislev is, yes? Yes? Okay. Chof Kislev is when the Alter Rebbe was taken out of prison. They took him to an address where there was a big house of living, but downstairs of this address there lived a Misnagid, and they took the Alter Rebbe into his house, and the Misnagid Pasha attacked the Rebbe and the whole philosophy and the shita. The Alter Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe did not respond in a negative way. The Alter Rebbe patiently, and 3 hours, this person was Pasha torturing the Alter Rebbe. And then the Chassidim heard that the Alter Rebbe said, they came running into the house and they took him out. The Alter Rebbe later said that those 3 hours that he spent over there having to answer to this person were more tough, more difficult than the whole time he was in prison. You've all heard of COVID, yes? COVID. I, Baruch Hashem, I was one of the first people to get COVID in February of last year. It was Matzah Purim, there's a whole story, but Baruch Hashem had a big shul program. Hundreds of people came, and not one person got COVID. My whole shul, not one person. I was in 90 people's homes on Purim Day. Not one person got COVID. Matzah Purim, I got COVID. I was thrilled that nobody else got it, and I had to go to the hospital. It was that time, the time was the hospitals did not know what they were doing. It was an upside down world. They refused to let me have talis and tefillin. My first day, they told me, you're not getting it. I told my wife, I called her up, it was 6:30 in the morning. I said, Shki is whatever time, 5 o'clock. If I don't have my film, I don't know what I'm like, but I'm going to watch. But I have to, and it was already getting later, there was no talis and film. Told my wife I have a new pair of tefillin in my house, to go find a new pair of tefillin, take them out of the zekel, take them out of the box, and wrap the shalyad in plastic. Plastic, like a lot of plastic, and write on it, sterile, and then sign Rabbi Moshe Klein on every plastic thing, and put it into aluminum foil with sterile. And then we called a few people in charge. Back at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they brought the tefillin to the room. The nurse says, I don't know how this got here, but this was allowed, and I had my talis and tefillin. The last day I was in the hospital, last day was Thursday night. I was alone in the hospital until Thursday night. And alone in the room because the hospital didn't know what to do. This hospital is very near Lakewood, Irat Kodesh. Lakewood is a Irat Torah, we do a lot of good things. We know a lot of good people there. Thursday night, they changed my room. And they told me because they're now getting more of an order in the hospital, I would be getting a Lakewood person for Shabbos to be with me as a roommate. And I remember Chof Kislev. And I decided I'm not here for Shabbos. I'm going home. My oxygen levels were not good. The doctor, the nurse didn't. But I decided I'm not spending Shabbos in this hospital. I remember Chof Kislev. I said, enough, I've suffered from COVID. This also, Baruch Hashem, before Shabbos, I was allowed to go home. So this idea, again, of Yud-Tes, this of changing us, of giving us something, is supposed to hopefully have an effect on us and bring us the real good time. Very, very sad. Very.
The rich is going to provide. That is going to work. Don't have to fix that first.
I just met this moment, beautiful David Edelman. David Edelman is what I call a real, the quintessential Chassid, the quintessential Shliach. I will never forget, I will not forget the Farbrengs of David Edelman. I was in Montreal as a kid. I remember when Rabbi Edelman brought his boys to Montreal. David Edelman once spoke, I think it was in Kislev, and his entire message was, he was the happiest man in the room. He wasn't the man that drank. Wasn't that type of man. But David Edelman was the happiest man because he was a chassid, and he was yelling, "We are chassidim!" And he was simply happy. So his Einuklach are here. I can't tell you what kind of a relation it made on me. He wasn't speaking my mother, he was just being happy because he was a chassid, he was a shliach of the Rebbe. I spent a week with him in Australia, 1996, in the summer of 1996. Poor David Edelman and I both came back with the same amount of money. I'll leave that to your imagination. So how much should we raise there? But David was a positive man, positive force. You don't realize, he got sick when he was in Australia, he ended up in the hospital. But he was such, I just can't say enough about the David Edelman. I heard there's 3 of his Einuklach that are here. You should all be very proud of the David Edelman. Inspiration. You all know the story of the Alter Rebbe going to prison. By the way, how many of you have ever been to Russia? How many people here have ever been to Russia? Russia. Okay. If you've ever been to Russia, you may begin to understand the system a little better. Because we don't understand this system. We read about this system. It's in the books. It's a nice story. Some schools do better jobs. They make plays and the children get an idea. We don't understand the system. If you go to Russia and you go to Petersburg, you know Achrei Boyer in Petersburg, yes? A famous letter Kakoyim. Yes? The 3 words on top of it. You saw those 3 words? The Tanya, yes? Penny base, yes? Hello? Anybody awake? Achrei Boyer in Petersburg. After he came out of Petersburg. You know what Petersburg is? Go to Petersburg and understand what the Alter Rebbe was fighting. It's unbelievable. You don't begin to understand what the Alter Rebbe was fighting until you go to Petersburg. You see an empire. An empire, not how to describe it. I had to go for Chassid to Petersburg. I looked at these buildings. 1, 2, 3, 10, 15, 100, 200, 500. The Tsar's palaces. We don't have respect for a president. I won't go now political, but I'm saying we don't begin to understand what it means to be fighting. To be, we're not going there. Leave alone. We're going to stay good. We don't begin to understand what this fight a Jew should fight a Tsar. We don't understand what it means, a Tsar. We don't. Go look at what the Tsar had. Forget about soldiers and forces. Look at what the Tsar had, and look what the Jew had. And he's taken away. I don't know if you begin to understand what that means. When I was in Petersburg and I was watching, I went to see the prisons, or the prison where the Alter Rebbe was. Now it's a museum. They're proud. They have a wax statue of the Alter Rebbe. This is one of their proud prisoners. You have to understand that. That's another meifus, that they're now claiming the Alter Rebbe is theirs. Not part of the Shliach business. That's okay. But understand, again, go look at the buildings. Forget about the powers. The Alter Rebbe stood up to every iota, every ounce. The Alter Rebbe was fighting the Tsar. Okay, we can't begin to understand. So, but that's what Kislev is. And then the Alter Rebbe, forget about that. The Alter Rebbe is fighting the Tsar. How is the Alter Rebbe fighting the Tsar? The Alter Rebbe doesn't allow for certain things to happen that could help him. The Alter Rebbe wants to win, but according to Chassidus, he's going to win. Only according to Chassidus is he going to win. So when the boat is going to the island, to the prison, and the Alter Rebbe wants to say Kiddush Levana, what does the Alter Rebbe do? Yeah, you read the story. Again, we read the story, we read it. The Alter Rebbe asks the captain, you have to understand, you're a Jewish prisoner. You're less than anything. He says to the captain, stop the boat. Why should I stop the boat? Kiddush Levana. Are you out of your mind? Think about it. You're out of your mind.
He's out of that.
Okay?
He is out of that.
He's out of your mind. And the captain looks at him, and the boat stops. It stops. Alter Rebbe doesn't want to do Kiddush Levana l'mayla miderech hateva. So the Alter Rebbe says to the captain, listen, the boat will start. Will you stop it now? And then the captain gets the idea. He smells something here. And he says to the Alter Rebbe, I'll stop it. On one condition. What's the condition? That you bless me. And the Alter Rebbe blessed the captain of the boat. But he stopped the boat. The Alter Rebbe's Kiddush, the captain lived over 100 years in those days. The Alter Rebbe wanted the mess of this should take place. The whole idea of it. Again, we're Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe, Chassidim of each Rebbe since 7 Rebbes teaching us the same things, and we're like, okay, nice. What's your breakfast tomorrow morning? Yeah, I don't know if you understand where we are, okay, and what's going on in our lives. We are the ones that carry through Yutas system. And I want to say, as a Shliach, learned so much of the people that get affected by our work. I don't stop to be astounded. Every day, every single day, I see miracles. And I see from people that I should be giving them the miracles. And they're giving me the miracles. I see it, mamish, every single, I'm telling you, open your eyes. The Rebbe says, open your eyes to see Mashiach. Open your eyes and you will see how Mashiach is here, how the world's changing. But the people are changing this world. And again, I'm going to share a few stories that show you how there are real Chassidim. There are people that get it. We are supposed to be the real Chassidim. We're supposed to get it. Okay? I brought a family, again, of Syrian Sephardic Jews to the 12 of them, a big limousine. And I said to them on the way, very, very, very Baptish people, very, very, very put together. And I said to them, I'm only asking you for two things. We're going to go to them, we're going to a side door. We're going to get in. Ask you for two things. There are 10,000 people here. They're all waiting to see them. The 10,000 people, you're going to get in. Two things. Don't take the Rebbe's time. I beg you, don't take the Rebbe's time. Especially the Rebbe's time. And then I turned to the ladies and I said, and I beg you, don't touch the Rebbe. That's what I said to them. Those are the only two things. They all agreed, no problem, yes. The family is standing in front of the Rebbe. I have a video of this. So it's not a story I can make up. The video is not public, for you'll soon find out why it's not public. But the videos there, they have to say how they approached the Rebbe. They are now in front of the Rebbe. So the first thing is the Elter Bubble, the oldest member of the family, a woman in her 90s. She stands in front of the Rebbe and she says, now she was a woman that knew the Rebbe. She dealt with the Rebbe, many letters back and forth. And she would give me many times shopping lists to give to the Rebbe. Anytime any member of her family, this one has an ankle that's not well, this one has this. She used to come at Rebbe, bring this, and she used to give me like shopping lists for the Rebbe. Big believer. So now she's finally standing in front of the Rebbe. And she says, Rebbe, it's so great to be here. And she stops and she's looking at the Rebbe. And Rabbi Gromer gives her a shulchan. That's move, another line. And her younger daughter, was a lady in her 60s, sees her mother getting a push. In the video, her younger daughter, a lady, not used to seeing her mother push, she turns around to her. She doesn't care. She says, excuse me, she says to Rabbi Groner, can't you see that she's talking to the, and the others, all the patients in the world. And the old woman tells, this is my good daughter, and this is my granddaughter. This one needs a brother of her knee, this one needs a brother of her shoulder. This one needs this one needs to get married. That is all the time in the world. And you hear in the video that the girl is saying, Yiddish Alba, and I know for 6 months I will not be able to breathe anyone else. But okay. And you hear it. Alba, and you hear this in the video. And she's going on, and now comes the daughter, the 60-year-old. She says to the Rebbe, I lie in a dark room for 3 days. I don't leave the room, and there's no light, and I feel like I'm going to die. This is the word she says to the Rebbe. I feel like I'm going to die. The Rebbe stops her, and the Rebbe says, that's a sign that you're going to live. That's what the Rebbe says. That's a sign you're going to live. And she looks, and you see that she looks at the Rebbe like, wow, the Rebbe just told her she's going to live. And then the Rebbe says to her, you're not only going to live, you're going to live long years and happy years. You're going to be very happy. And her face lights up. And then the Rebbe says, listen to this. This is 1991. In 20 years from now, you're going to write me a letter. Hear this? In 20 years from now, you're going to write me a letter about the happiness in your life. This lady doesn't have to buy life insurance for 20 years. The Rebbe tells her, 20 years from now, you're going to write me a letter. She, what? I don't hear you. She Pashut goes crazy. Pashut goes crazy. And again, we are Chassidim, and they're not. And looks, and she grabs the Rebbe's hand and kisses him. At that moment, it was like the whole room went The Rebbe does not move. The Rebbe does not move. And then she finished, she moves on, and then her daughter comes up. And her granddaughter comes up. And she again comes back into the picture with the Rebbe. And she says to the Rebbe, my granddaughter, she's suffering from scoliosis of the spine. This is 1991. She needs surgery. And the Rebbe says, do you know there's new developments? The Rebbe says these words, developments, in traction. And there's a new brace. The Rebbe tells her there's a new brace. And the grandmother says to the Rebbe, she wears a brace. She wears a brace all the time and she'll never take it off. The Rebbe turns to the grandmother and says, you are not a prophet. Do not trigger. She said her granddaughter will never take off the brace. The Rebbe says, you're not a prophet. Do not trigger. This granddaughter is now a Baba with grandchildren and doesn't wear a brace. And this grandmother wrote the letter after 20 years, and she's alive and well. We have a Arichas Yom. And this is what the Rebbe does. In a very, in a moment, I could not go to 770 for a few weeks, at least, until this temperature came down. I just want to tell you, 2 years later, this woman, still close, I visited her. She once said to me, Rabbi, she goes, I know what I did, she says. I still don't think I did the wrong thing. This is what she says. Just a woman feeling for a Rebbe. We are Chassidim, we are his, and we are his shluchim, we are his. I can't explain to you what it means. And we are the ones, we're on the job, but we're not on the job. And the whole idea changing the world of Yitzhak Kislev is to change the world b'derech hatava, not milmaila, to deal with the Alter Rebbe stopped the boats and didn't want to. He waited for the captain to stop the boat. And therefore, this whole concept of Rebbe, Chassid, Rebbe, Shliach, Rebbe, whatever you want to say, it applies to each and every one of us. And when you're in your place of business, it doesn't matter where you are, and you're talking to a Jew, the Rebbe is sitting here now, and watching you, and watching what you do. And when you're in your own home, and it's quiet, it's whatever it should be, he's sitting there, watching, doing. I can't describe this enough. And again, I learned so much of this from the people. There was a guy over here before. I don't know if he went home already. Where's he sleep? I'll tell you a story about him. Is he still here? Mr. Sandman.
Still here.
Sandman, Mr. Sandman. Doctor, I called you 20 years ago. You don't remember? Okay, I got to tell you this story. It's another story you learn. A Bacher, a Lubavitch Bacher, a Meshichist Bacher, was in Eretz Yisrael, and he was going to get married the week after Purim, around 20 years ago. When was 9/11? 20 years ago? It was right after 9/11. 20 years ago. And the Bacher was going to get married. There was a time he couldn't get a visa. He couldn't get a visa from Eretz Yisrael into America. It was after 9/11, very difficult. So the Bacher was going to get married the week after Purim. And the Bacher were with him, the ship that we saw from Eretz Yisrael, sometimes the violence, they were not of good. And the Bacher was like, shh, this, you're that. Go to Montreal. To get into America from Montreal, very easy. From Eretz Yisrael, you need a visa, but from America and Canada, it's no problem going there. So the Bacher came to Montreal with his Yitzhak, Numi Mashke, very shikah. Yitzhak is like a month before Purim. He's going to get married in 1 month. He was very shikah. his chaverim were very shikar. So one of his chaverim said, "Mr. Schwanz, you are no good. You're not going to daven the Rebbe's minion. You're not going to get the Rebbe's siddur. You're worthless." And one of the American Bacham threw his passport onto the table and said to the Israeli Bacham, "Go now, take my passport and go daven by the Rebbe's minion before you go." Okay? 6 Bacham packed into a car. You don't remember the story. 6 Bacham packed into the car. 5 of them were legit. 1 of them was not legit. This Bacham was shikar. And they went to the Canadian-American border. And he gives his United States passport. And the customs agent says, "What's your name?" Bacham doesn't know what his name is. Because he's shikar, number one, and he doesn't know what the name of the passport is. He has no clue what his name is. So the customs agent pulls him out, and they start interrogating him. He doesn't speak English. They say, "Sign your name." He can't sign his name. Finally, they take him into prison. And they bring an Israeli interpreter, a mamzer, a woman, a woman professor, a very anti-religious person. And through what? And through the Israeli professor, he doesn't say that he got a passport from an American bacher when he was shikar in Montreal Yeshiva. He's afraid to be a moiser, you understand? So in his wisdom, he says through the interpreter, "I stole the passport from an American. And that's the way I'm crossing the border." Post 9/11, trying to cross the border with a stolen passport is a minimum of 3 years in prison. They pull him out of the car, they send the 5 boys back. This bacher is now, no one knows where he is. He's gone. It's history. He's taken to a prison, a federal lockup. He's taken to Dannemora. Does anybody know Dannemora? Dannemora is a jail. If anybody knows, there are 2 inmates, murderers that escaped upstate New York a few years ago. They got shot. 1 guy got killed. 1 guy got caught. Very famous prison, Dannemora. This is really what has been held in Dannemora prison. I have nothing to do with the story. I'm a Shliach in New Jersey. I'm a chaplain with many different things. My son is I have nothing to do with this. I get a call from a mother in Beersheba crying her heart out. Malasot, where she been? I have a son who's supposed to get married in a month. I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's dead, if he's alive. I don't know where he is. I know nothing. But please take the case. They want for me. This sounds like the Canadian border. Wait, please, there's nobody else. So, okay. There's a Halakhi, his name is Moshe Bamzer. Anybody know that name? He's a Flumi. His father was a big Mikudav of the Rebbe. Rabbi Chaim Bamzer used to sit behind the Rebbe by Farbrengs. He was a professor at Yeshiva University. He did a lot of Gatus work. He wrote a book. And his son is Moshe Bamzer, who was a Rav in Albany, New York. And he was Nishkin Lubavitch, but I'm very close to Lubavitch. He was a chaplain. I get the call. I called Moshe Bamzer, who was a chaplain in New York State. We found out where the boy is, in which prison, and we transferred him. He never was 3 days with no film, no kashrus. He drank water for 3 days. We finally found out where he was. We brought him to Albany County Jail, and now he's facing a federal court case to go explain to a federal judge, a federal investigator, that a chassid goes to his rebbe before he gets married to daven by the rebbe's meeting. And a border means nothing. A border. It's a border. I'm going to daven the rebbe's meeting. But go explain this to a judge. It's like. So I called Rabbi Yosef and I begged him to reach out to Joe Lieberman, who was a United States Senator at the time. And I begged him, please, if a senator writes a letter, Chassid understands a Rebbe, Chassid, and you reached out and you were told by your connection, you called me back. This was right after 9/11. This is an immigration passport issue. And Joe Lieberman's chief of staff said to you, if I bring it to his desk, I will be fired on the spot. This was the response. So we're not getting letters of support from Joe Lieberman. We tried. We then tried another senator called Hillary Clinton. Anybody know that name? Whatever she was. And she also said, no United States official would touch this for a tenth of it. We got letters from Chavrei Knesset to support it. No, we tried. Thank you for trying. But it wasn't going to happen that way. So I made trips to the jail to convince because the way it works in the federal court system is that the judge doesn't do his homework. The judge relies on two investigators to do homework to find out what was wrong, what happened. And if they say to the judge something bad happened, the judge sentences the person. If they say to the judge, it's not so bad, then it's a different story. It was very important to get to the investigators when they interrogate him to make sure they understand what it means, a Rebbe Chassid, going to a Rebbe. He heard stories as a child, a Chassid going to his Rebbe. What is a border? Who cares about a border? A border. Come on, a border. Ich mir a border. Who cares? Ask for it. Doesn't mean anything. Chassid goes to get a bracha from his Rebbe. That's what it means. 5:30 in the morning, the investigators showed up at the prison. There was a snowstorm that night in Albany. And we were at the entrance of the prison at 5:30, Rabbi Bamser and myself. But we weren't part of the investigation. It came two investigators, we stopped them. And Rabbi Bamser says, this is the rabbi from New Jersey, I'm from New York, please allow us in, we want to speak to you. They said, absolutely not, we have nothing to say to you. And they went into the prison. You have to understand the picture. The Bacher, in an orange jumpsuit in shackles. He's now been in prison 30 days. He's in shackles, he's sitting in a cell. Two investigators come in with an Israeli interpreter who has no love for Yiddishkeit. And the Bacher is explaining. And he is. And finally, after half hour, they agreed to allow us into the room, to the cell. So we came in. And we got to now explain to the federal investigators why this Bacher did what he did. So Rabbi Bamser, who's a piety, doesn't know about Mashiach is alive and well either. He doesn't know about Rebbe Melech HaMashiach Shalita either. And Rabbi Bamser is sitting now with the Bacher in front of two federal investigators, an Israeli interpreter, and he says, can we speak? The rabbi said, yeah, speak. Rabbi Bamser says, I am not a Lubavitcher, but I believe in Lubavitch. I know their Rebbe, my father. He says, a Lubavitcher is different from any other person in the world. When a Lubavitcher wakes up in the morning, he doesn't know where he's going to go to sleep that night. The world is his playground. A Lubavitcher lives in a different way, like even not the Orthodox. They're different. They're Lubavitch. They're Hasidim. Their Rebbe is, you have to understand, they're different. This is Rabbi Bamser speaking to two goyim, explaining why this Bacher did what he did. He says, a Lubavitcher, he doesn't know. He's in a different place. The world, borders mean nothing to a Lubavitcher. And then he says the following words. This yeshiva boy wanted to pray at the grave of his Rebbe. That's what he says, these words, at the Ohel. And as soon as he says these words, the Bacher says, Al tagid shani nasati la'oil shel HaRebbe, Al tagid shani isa la'oil. Ani lo nosa la'oil. I'm sitting there. Whoa. Forget about the investigators. Forget about, I got Rabbi Bamser to deal with now. You understand? And he's looking at me, what? I said, Rabbi Bamser, don't worry, just say, let me speak. And he says, no. I And the lawyers, this is third, the Alter Rebbe. What? Translate. The Bacha says, when Rabbi Bams is trying to explain why this Bacha did what he did, he said the Bacha wanted to go to the Ayel of the Rebbe before his Chasana to get a bracha. The Bacha is a big Mishichist. He is. Says, and he understands enough English. He says, do not say that I went to the oil. I never went to the oil, and I will not go to the oil. And I don't want you to say that I went to the oil. But Bams is sitting there, he doesn't know what hit him. Rosh doesn't know what hit him. And he's looking at me like, wow, what? I don't know. So finally I said, Rabbi, let me speak. Let me speak to the investigator. And I said to the investigators, this is a very, very connected to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he wanted to pray at the Rebbe's minyan before he gets married. That's what he wanted to do. And they accepted it. The Koyal Mamish, the court case was on Purim day. I had a problem personally because I have a shul. I had to be Megillah and I had to testify in the courtroom. So I chartered, it's another whole story with a little plane. I never knew it was a little plane. I never knew that you can vomit in a little plane. I never knew a lot of things which I learned. Okay, but I flew there on Purim morning and testified to the judge. His mamish Purim, and the judge found him guilty and punished him with time served, 36 days in prison, and the next day he was sent back to Israel, and he got married the next week. He never got to the Rebbe's room.
That's the one in CHABAD.
He never got to the Rebbe's room. Sad, and he called me since then, telling me that he wants to come at least to go to the Rebbe's minyan. Yes, I want to tell you, the Alter Rebbe didn't allow for 1 minute that people should say on him as Mishkan Chassid. Very interesting again. And I learned from whether you agree he should have done it, it's not. I just want to tell you, just an interesting thing. When he got the sentence, he was going to be deported the next day. It was a big simcha. I had to fly back. I promised to fly. It was crazy. It was time. But I couldn't leave. So I went upstairs to the jail where he's being held in the federal courthouse. I said to the marshals, I have to see him. I said, ask the judge. They allowed me to go in, walk into the room. And there's bars. In the middle of the room. The bracha is sitting on one side of the bars in an orange jumpsuit with the initials of the jail on his back. And I look at him and I put my arm, it's Purim morning. It's 11 o'clock Purim morning. Put my arms through the bars onto his shoulders. He put his arms through the bars onto my shoulders. And we started in front of the two federal marshals standing there, and we started singing. And we sang the whole song. 10 minutes. I'll never forget that. And that was it. I had to leave. I couldn't. But here's a book that wouldn't allow for a moment. It was an education for me. Definitely education for Rabbi Bamser. Okay. But a bocha wouldn't allow for a moment that he'd sit in prison for 3 years. Okay. There's still such people around. I can't say enough of this. I just want to conclude with one story. You know that Lubavitch is a controversy, sadly. Shliach, how much do we reveal, how much do we not reveal? And we don't know, we're still a lot of us are in do we say it, do we not say it? Can we reveal it, can we not reveal it? I want to tell you a story. I started with the story. The guy that gave me the money didn't give me the money easily. It didn't come easily. At the first meeting, he gave the 25,000, then we had a meeting before the dinner about giving money for the bill. He came to the meeting and he said, I'll give you $500,000 for your bill. And I said to him, I love you, but I'm building, at that time I thought it was a $3 million building. It turned out to be a $6 million building, the first building. I said, I would not put your name on this building for $500,000. I can't. Now, at this time, you're playing with big dice. It is not simple. He says to me, I wasn't prepared to go up from $500,000, but I see you mean it. I'll go to $750,000 on one condition. So what's your condition? You shake my hand right now. And stop asking me for money. I looked at the third party, that's the guy that connected us, and I see his eyes looking at me, ready to kill me. Shake him. The man just gave you $750,000 and you're looking, shake his hand. I shook his hand. And we now go to make a dinner. 2 weeks before the dinner, he calls his closest friends. Listen to this. He calls his closest friends to a meeting in his house. In a beautiful house. That's the house with the oil on the driveway. Anyway, he had a beautiful one. And he calls his friends, and his lawyer came to them. His lawyer was a very outstanding lawyer, a bow tie. The whole picture of the lawyer, always dressed, always very well, aristocrat, very, very high class attorney, very high class. And at the meeting in his house, the lawyer got up. The lawyer said, I want to say a few words. And he said, my father, his father was a big lawyer, graduated from Rutgers University in 1936. There was no CHABAD house. 19. And I graduated from Rutgers in 1950, whatever it's. There was no CHABAD house. And my children, old, whatever. And now there's going to be a CHABAD house. I'm very happy. I'm going to give $10,000. There's a large sum for this lawyer to give to CHABAD. Okay. I said, thank you very much. Now it's a week before the dinner. And Les, my career says to me, I want my lawyer to come to the dinner and say those words. What he said at my house. So I said, very good idea. Let's get the lawyer and let's get him to say those words. Very good. So we go to the lawyer's office, and the Kavir says to the lawyer, I was very touched by your words. I want you to come to the dinner, and I want you to say those words. And I want you to be the chairman, the master of ceremonies. The lawyer says, I'm sorry. I had a moment of weakness in my life. That was it. I don't open up. I'm not going to say it again. I'm not interested in saying it again. I don't believe in it. Leave me alone. So Les, my ear is tough. With his lawyer, says to the lawyer, oh yes, you're gonna be the master of ceremonies, and you're gonna speak, you're gonna say everything that you said at the dinner. So the lawyer said, why? I'm not going to. He says, oh yes, you will. He says, why? He says, because if you do it, then I'm going to give another $250,000 to the rabbi. And that's why you're going to do it. I'm sitting there. I'm just not shamayim, like you know. And then we have days left to the dinner, Amish days. And I remember the lawyer said, I'll give you an answer in 24 hours. You have to understand what those 24 hours are like for me. I called Rabbi Groner, said, we'll go into the Rebbe's room, and Bet HaBrocha, this is, it's mamish like, oh, you know, Bet HaBrocha, I don't. Next morning, my phone hasn't rang. My peer called me and said, did you hear from Alan? I say, no. He says, I'm going to teach you a lesson. You are not to call him. You call him, you lose. He has to call you. I'm ready to call him to offer him $50,000 to come to the dinner. Understand? I'm ready to do anything. Oh, but I learned from the good guy. I can't call him. Mamish, a few hours later, phone call comes in. Alan's on the phone, Rabbi, I'll do it. So now we have Mamish days left of the dinner. A few days before the dinner, we have a last meeting between the lawyer and myself to discuss the dinner. The lawyer walks into the dinner, to the meeting, and is as angry as can be. Angry. I look at him, I see I see anger coming out of his. And he's looking at me, he's so angry. I don't know what I did. I didn't speak to him, I didn't do anything. Why is he angry? If anybody remembers, 1993, there was a group of Lubavitcher Chassidim that believed that Rebbe's Mashiach spent money, big money, to put up billboards that Rebbe's Mashiach and put up ads in CBS. But the Rebbe's Mashiach and the Rebbe's about to be Yisrael, Mashiach is going to come. And this lawyer heard one of those ads on CBS radio, and he connected that ad with CHABAD House, with me. And he flipped when he heard this. And he comes into the meeting angry, and he says to me, I have to ask you one question. I said, what's your question? And I realized, this is he says, do you believe that Rebbe's Mashiach? Like that. Sitting in front, I never discussed this. I looked him in the face and I say, Alan, if you are asking me if I believe that Rebbe's Mashiach, my answer is yes. I believe that Rebbe's Mashiach. He looks at me and says to me, well, let me tell you one thing. I don't want to hear one word at the dinner of Rebbe. I don't want to hear one word at the dinner of Mashiach. And if I hear one word of either, I'm walking out of the dinner. I'm not here to support them. I'm here to support the CHABAD House on campus. Have I made myself clear as a lawyer? I say, Mr. Raven, abundant. And that was it. I have 2 days left of the dinner. I wrote a letter to the Rebbe. And I wrote to the Rebbe like this. I know what I have to do as a Shliach of the Rebbe. I know what I have to do. I'm asking for a bracha that whatever I do should only help the building. That's all. And I asked for a bracha. I made one change before the dinner. I spoke after all the speakers. In other words, the program would be ending with me, so in case somebody walks out, the MC walks out. I'm sorry, Zolagain, you don't behave. I spoke after everyone. He spoke, the other spoke. It was a very beautiful thing. And I had to say my words. I said my words. I said what I had to say. And as soon as I finished, I sat down. As soon as I sat down, he said, dinner is now being served. The lawyer stood up at the head table. He walks over to me. He says, Rabbi, you and I have to have some words. So I looked at him and I remember there's a thing at the murder that says that before you shut the Bahima, you give him to drink. Yes? So I said, I might as well say L'chaim before I go speak to this guy, because, okay, and I said L'chaim, and I went to sit. He said, sit down. He was sitting there at the head table with his wife. He says to me the following words. He says, I've done homework on your level. I've done homework on your level. My daughter is married 11 years. She has no children. We think we can ask them for this. This is what it says. And within 1 year, she had a blessing. She had a child. So all I can say again is we don't know, we don't understand always what we do. But we are all the Rebbe's people. We should do what the Rebbe wants us to do. Not to be afraid. And there's a lot of fear of nothing. The world expects of us, they know of us, they know the Lubavitchers over there. And we should all make this youth system should be the last youth system of Golus should be already the beginning of the Chaim.
Somebody else? Announce it as kasha.
Nobody wants to catch it. No, you can see some that's captured. Thank you, Mendoza. We want more. That's the story of the first story. What about the other?
It says that this was a Chassidische Farbrengs in oil, in Lufton, in Malach, Mechol, nicht Lufton. Chassidische Farbrengs, the whole idea why can a Chassidische Farbrengs do more than Malach, Mechol? Because a Chassidische Farbrengs is when people sit together, and talk together, and hear together, and learn together, and help together. And the greatest way, the greatest form of nachas to a parent is when a parent sees the children together. There's no greater nachas that a parent can get. And that's what Chassidische Farbrengs, and that is more powerful than Malach B'chol. When Hashem sees his children together, the power is unheard of, unbelievable. When the Rebbe sees his children together, Farbrengs together, again, the power is unbelievable. So I want to just wish out a full shleima to Menachem Mendelman for Aliyah, to have a complete full shleima, Shimon, Alevi ben Leah, Amitai ben Shoshana, and Shluchim, to all have a full shleima to Kodesh. As Shluchim, we have many different hats, we wear many different. We do many different things, and in the course of the day, we are. At times we miss the chamayim. We can be in one place in the morning, a totally different place at night. When we started our second building, the second building was a $10 million project, and it turned out to be more. I thought it was at the time $10 million. I didn't have no way to begin. And I received a phone call from a lawyer in a different state telling me that he knows about CHABAD House and he knows that we're starting a big project, a $10 million project. And the lawyer said to me, I have a foundation, and we wish to donate $2 million to your CHABAD House. It's a phone call out of nowhere. Can you imagine? Sitting at home, you get a phone call, a lawyer calls you up, we want to give you $2 million. The next day I was on a plane traveling to visit the lawyer. I mean, it just makes sense. When I came to the lawyer's office, a lot of things didn't ring well. Just a lot of things didn't seem right. And the lawyer, it wasn't in Nigeria. The lawyer was not in Nigeria. I know about Nigeria. I have Balabatim that have been to Nigeria and lost money in Nigeria. And I told them not to go. They went. And there were a lot of things which didn't ring well. But $2 million is still a very big Yetzer Hara. When you have no money, you want to raise $10 million in the bank, after you $2 million. Well, it wasn't quite $2 million. It would be a very substantial amount, but it wasn't the amount that he said. Turned out there was some stuff that wasn't right. I just want to digress for a moment. There was a Shliach, a very famous Shliach, that came from Eretz Yisrael to New York to raise money. And he needed money very badly in Eretz Yisrael. It was a matzav, very bad. And he was in New York, he was in 770, he gets a phone call from a friend. The friend is in Florida. And the friend tells him, get on a plane and I'll meet you in this airport in Florida. I'll meet you in the airport. But get here right now because I have a business deal for you, for your CHABAD house. But I can't speak about it over the phone. This is what he said. The Shliach got on a plane immediately, within hours, and he flew to Florida, and he met his friend in the airport. And the friend told him the whole story. What was the story? The friend was an Israeli investor who was supposed to invest the money in America in a certain business, a legitimate thing to make a very high return. That deal fell through, couldn't make the money. He invested it in another business, which wasn't so kosher as the first one, and he made even more money. Now the problem was how to get that money that was made to Eretz Yisrael. And so he told the Shliach, I want you to take all the money and keep, and he gives him the exact number of dollars that the Shliach came to America to raise. Keep that amount, and the rest we'll figure out how to get back to Eretz Yisrael, and we'll take care of it. The Shliach was in seventh heaven. Couldn't believe it. He flew back to New York, but he's on the kusher to the Rebbe. He's a Shliach that doesn't do things without the Rebbe. And he wrote immediately a note, a zettel to the Rebbe. And he wrote this whole zettel to the Rebbe from beginning till end. From beginning till end. From the beginning of the story till the end of the story. And he asked the Rebbe for the Rebbe's Eitzah and Bracha. And the Rebbe wrote him back immediately. The Rebbe underlined the beginning of the story. In the beginning of the story, a friend said to him, fly to Florida because I want to tell you about something that I cannot speak about over the phone. So the Rebbe writes to the Shliach, you cannot take money from anything that you cannot speak about over the phone. Mamish, Hafli Pella, and the Shliach turned it down. Underline that part of the story, which is the smallest part of the story. I said, I don't want to speak about it over the phone. And the Rebbe underlined that and says, you don't know, but you don't get involved with that. Now let's go to my story. My story was $2 million. Very necessary, very important. I came home from this flight and I told the story to my wife. My wife is a Beis Yosef graduate. Beis Yosef is a very good school and teaches the girls to be very straight. The Bochum are not taught as well. For some reason, Bochum are not taught as well as the girls are taught. The girls are very straight, the boys are not so straight. I once went through a red light coming to Crown Heights Erev Shabbos on Canal Street
Yeah.
And it was terrible traffic. It was a terrible story. It was Erev Shabbos. I was rushing. There was a shayla meter maid, and my car got hit by another. It doesn't matter. And I said to my wife, "You're coming with me to the courtroom to testify that the light was green. I'm not paying this ticket." My wife says to me, "I'm not going to testify that the light was green." I said, "You are." Ishak Sheva. I said, "It's saying Bailo, you know the Gemara?" So I said, "You're going," and I went to court. I went into the courtroom. My wife was holding one of our babies. I got in front of the judge and I said, "The light was green." The meter maid, Sheva, in Machshema, says the light was red. The judge says, "You have a witness?" I said, "I sure do." He says, "Who's your witness?" I said, "My wife." He says, "Bring her up." Bring her up to the judge. The judge looks and says, "What was the light? Red or green?" My wife went to be sifted. She says, "I didn't see. I was ready to. I was mamish. I couldn't believe this is my witness. And this is my wife. And she doesn't say what I expected." And at that moment, that second, the baby, our baby started to cry. Said, "Oh, 1 second." She said, and then the baby started crying. And the judge looked at her and then the judge looks at the baby. The baby's crying. The judge goes, "What a cute baby, case dismissed. But I will never take her again. Never again did I try." Let's go back now to the story. So my wife says, the money, this $2 million deal is not for you.
But they want to do some laundry? So bad. Whatever.
Doesn't matter. It just, I'm thinking, the whole purpose of me telling the stories is to see why we should learn from the people that are far away from the Rebbe, that never met the Rebbe, don't know Rebbe, and you see the way they look at the Rebbe, and that's what we should learn from. That's my whole point. So my wife said, "I don't believe in this. It's not right," but she sees the it's $2 million. $2 million. So my wife says to me, "I'll agree to one thing. The president of CHABAD House, he's not a film person. The president of CHABAD House is a lawyer. The president of CHABAD House is a CPA. He's an accountant. He has yes. Okay, thank you. So the president of my wife says to me, my wife says, "Go speak." She'll agree that I should speak to the president of the CHABAD House, ask him his advice. I make an appointment to the president of CHABAD House. His name is Donald. I go into his office. I say, "Donald, there's a lawyer offered me $2 million for the building. I want to do it." He says, "What's the deal?" And I start telling him the deal. And within 2 minutes of me telling him the deal, 2-3 minutes, he calls me Yossi. Yossi. He says, "Yossi, stop. Stop. I don't want to hear anymore." I say, "Donald, what should I do?" He says, "Stop." So what am I doing? He says, "I'm buying you a t-shirt." I looked at him, "What? You're buying me a t-shirt?" He says, "I'm buying you a t-shirt." I said, "Donald, stop making fun. Tell me what you're doing. Should I do that?" He says, "I'm buying you a t-shirt." There's 5 letters on the t-shirt. WWTRS. I said, "Donald, what is WWTRS?" He says, "What would the Rebbe say?" This is what he says to me. And that was the end of the deal. 10 years, that's not 10 years, 12 years later, I thank the Eibishter 100 times that I did not accept the deal. I thank the Eibishter, I listened to the president of CHABAD House. And I spoke about this on my wife. I spoke about this at a girls' high school, a Lubavitcher girls' high school. And the girls, after they heard the story, they went and manufactured a huge T-shirt, and it's hanging at the entrance of the girls' high school. And it says WWTRS. And it's something which, again, we have to ask ourselves every morning, get up, you're going to do whatever you're doing. WWTRS. And this is coming from a Yid, I can say, who was married to a shiksa. His children is goy. I can't describe how far away, okay, he was, and he never met the Rebbe. He knows of it, he's learned and so on, but he never met the Rebbe. And yet he has this feeling about the Rebbe, WWTRS, the biggest chassid of the world doesn't, and he has that feeling, okay? And we're the Rebbe's children, we're the Rebbe's children, we're the Rebbe's children, whatever words you have to put in after, but we are the Rebbe's blank. And we should just ask ourselves that question, WWTRS. And if we lived a little with that, and you have to make decisions, make the right decisions on all levels. Let us already see the Rebbe let's hear already what the Rebbe says.
I'm not trying.
Now that it's after the midnight hour, you can say
Last speech.
last. Okay. You have a Shiva Bacher here, yes? What does the word no, nun aleph mean? No. In the Torah you say no. What does no, nun aleph mean? What? Please. No means please. So we find no mentioned a few times in the Torah. One of the times it's mentioned in the Torah is Moshe Rabbeinu speaking to the Eibusher after the Yidden did Chet Egel. Yes? After the Chet Egel, and Moshe Rabbeinu needs to get the Eibusher. Mecheini no mesiflecha. Yes, v'imayin mecheini no mesiflecha. Yes? Moshe Rabbeinu says, what is v'im ayin? Mecheini no mesiflecha means what? What is Moshe Rabbeinu saying? You have Talmidei Chachamim here. Hello, Bachrim? What is Moshe Rabbeinu saying? If you're not going to forgive them, Mecheini no mesiflecha. What does this mean? Take me out of your Torah. Take my name, erase my name from your Torah. The most powerful statement of Moshe Rabbeinu, the faithful shepherd. Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Mecheini no mesiflecha." Yes? Are those nice words that Moshe Rabbeinu was using, or are those powerful words that Moshe Rabbeinu is using? Powerful. Is Moshe Rabbeinu being nice, or is he being powerful? Powerful. It's a mamash, an argument in Moshe Rabbeinu on the Kadosh Baruch Hu alone, and Moshe Rabbeinu is saying to the Eibush, "Mecheini no mesiflecha." So if Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to threaten in the most powerful way the Eibush, and to say to the Eibush, "Mecheini no mesiflecha," how does the word "no" come into play here? No means what? Please. When you're going to threaten a person, you don't say, please. You say put your case on the table. You don't say, you say, Mecheini mesiflecha. No only takes away from the threat of Moshe Rabbeinu saying Mecheini mesiflecha. Does that make sense? So why does Moshe Rabbeinu say Mecheini no mesiflecha? Please. So the answer is Moshe Rabbeinu does not say please. Moshe Rabbeinu is using every power in his to help the Yidden. But Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking about something else. And the Eibush that tells the Yidden, tells Moshe Rabbeinu to tell, it says in the Pasha, Daber no be'ozneim. Remember that story? V'yishalu ish me'Yisrael v'ish me'Yisrael usak v'chesed v'chazor. How did the Yidden get the gold to make the Egel Azov? How did they get the gold? They went to the Mitzrayim, and the Eibush tells them to do it. Daber no be'ozneim, and go get the gold out of the Mitzrayim, and the Mitzrayim will give it to you. So Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to the Eibush the best argument. Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, I didn't want to tell them to get gold. I knew with gold they'd get corrupted, they'd build the Egel Azov. but only because you said Daber no ba'ozni ha'om that I listened to you. And now Mecheni no, he's bringing back the no to the first no. And he's saying, you're at fault because you made them take the gold and the silver. What does this mean? This means that the test of gold and silver is more difficult than the test of Mitzrayim. The test of Mitzrayim, we passed. And the test of the clay, the Kislev and the Zov, we made the Egel Azov. Sadly, we're living in the same times. The test of Yutes Kislev in Russia, we passed. No question, we passed that test. Chassidim passed, the Rebbe's passed, everybody passed. But Yutes Kislev in America, it's a different Yutes Kislev. It's by Kesef, by Zov. We're a different world, right? We have, retirement packages. We have 401k, yes. I had a person come to me for a job into the Shliach, and he asked me for his retirement package. I told him where he should get a job. Not here, because we don't have that, unfortunately. Some shluchim, they ever told me on a certain city, they ever told me, Atzos, listen to the city, Einoi Masimo Bishvilo. It's not for you. And that's one of those cities that have these retirement packages. It's interesting. I love it. It's not for now, but the test of having it is a more difficult test than not having it. And I think with the Kislev in America, it's time to pass the test of having it. Baruch Hashem, we have it. There's nothing wrong. But it's a test. Having it is a test. And I want to conclude one story because it's time. A test of person, that's a person of having it. Our first Baal Shuvah, coming on Shlichus, I can't say enough about this person. The person was a PhD in physics at Princeton University. He was a genius of a person, but socially very awkward. He did not know socially, he was a very awkward person, but inside him, he was pushing a genius. He was a man with ideas. And we came on Shlichus, Tes Vav Elul. We got married on Hey Elul. We came on Shlichus, Tes Vav Elul, 10 days after our Chassid. And our first Yom Tif, Rosh Hashanah, we went back to Crown Heights. In Kippur, we went back. And Sukkot, we decided to stay. You're staying at Sukkot, you have to build a Sukkah. But the apartment which we lived in didn't allow no one to build anything anywhere outside. But the owner was a Fumiyid. So I went to the owner quietly and I said, listen, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you we're going to build a sukkah. And he said it's not allowed. But we decided to build a sukkah. A few days before Sukkot, I come home at night and there's a note on my door, my apartment door. A note from a person, I don't know who this person is. We're only on Shlichus a few weeks. And he writes to me, I was told you're building a sukkah and I want to be part of this. So I called him the next day. He's a doctor, PhD from Princeton. And I said to him, let's meet. We met and we became friends and we built a sukkah together. And it turns out he was an engineer. And there's a Gemara, Avuch b'mai have a zor tfei, which mitzvah did your father shine in? This person shined in the mitzvah of Sukkot. He became from the first night of Sukkot in our Sukkot. It poured. The first night, it poured like no, and we told him, go inside. You don't have to sit in the Sukkot. We have to sit here. And he refused to go inside. And it was like, I don't know how to describe it, like a transformation of the person in the sukkah, the first night of sukkahs. And he was sitting there, the rain was pouring down on him. I'm sure a PhD from Princeton University sitting in the rain in the sukkah, his first Jewish experience, and it's pouring. And this guy singing, he became not from, he became a chassid to the nth degree. I'm talking about his children, his grandchildren today learn in the Poconos yeshiva. Okay, they wear yefi yarmulkes, the big, not the little letters, the big letters. They have. If I tell you where his children are today, grandchildren, and this person became, I can't describe what he did, and he gave up his job, and he became an engineer in CHABAD house, and he worked in CHABAD house, and he gave years of his life. Unbelievable person. I can tell you he's responsible today, he's responsible today for thousands of sukkahs going up. He went around the country and he built sukkahs and he showed people how to build sukkahs. And he engineered a plan that you can build a sukkah for $18. And that was called the Chais. What?
Sukkah maybe the rain doesn't go into?
No. That was a 36 double chai. Then there was the King David special, $72. He was a genius. He built our sukkah, the CHABAD sukkah, for 500 people. It's still standing to this day. I once had a class in I give classes. So one of the people of my class came to our sukkah in the CHABAD. He's an engineer. And he's looking around at the sukkah and he comes over and says, Rabbi, you did not build this sukkah. So I say to him, how do you know that I didn't build it? He goes, Rabbi, I'm an engineer. A rabbi did not build the sukkah. He goes, no rabbi knows how to build what was built here. He says it's an engineer built. This person built, responsible for building thousands of sukkahs. I want to tell you one story about this man. This man died on Yud Tes Elul. And he died on Motzei Shabbos. I was there, Shas Meiser, in the hospital with his wife. And we made the kfura immediately on Sunday morning. And although he was very well known in the community, but there was no time. There was no time to make a big kfura. And we buried him immediately. That's what we knew we had to do. And that was it. But his shloshim was Yud Tes Tishrei, Chal HaMoed Sukkos. And we decided with the family to make a shloshim for him and invite the whole community because everybody knew this person. He was known as a Baal Tshuva of Lubavitch. And again, he learned Chassidus and he had a feeling. Rebbe, he was an unbelievable person, but he was a PhD in physics from Princeton University. But everybody knew him. And 500 people came to his shloshim in the sukkah of CHABAD house, Chal HaMoed Sukkos, to pay respects to this man. 500 people from the community came. And a Rav of the community, Rabbi Eliyahu Kaufman, who was a nephew of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, very close friend of Lubavitch, but a Rav of the community. During the shloshim, he said to me, I want to speak. I want to say a few words. I said, of course, say a few words. He takes the microphone and he says the following words. He gets up to speak. He says, Moshe, I'm speaking to the nifter. His name was Moshe. He says, Moshe, I want to ask you, in the name of the whole Kehillah, I want to ask you for mechila, for forgiveness. And the whole sukkah got quiet. What is the rabbi speaking about? Mechila? What happened? And the Rav says, I want to tell you a story about Moshe. This is a Lubavitcher Chassid. Moshe was a man that couldn't daven. He couldn't daven the way we daven. Because until he was 40, 50 years of age, he never davened. So he davened very slow every word. Shachris Moshe took 2 hours to daven, 3 hours to daven. Mincha wasn't 10 minutes for him. Mincha was a half hour. Ma'ariv, 45 minutes. He couldn't daven fast. He couldn't do it, but he davened. We knew in Chabados, that if you wanted to reach Moshe between the hours of 8 and 11, you're not going to reach him. He's davening. If you want to reach him, we knew it. There wasn't a question by us. But he's davening. He takes his time to daven. But Moshe didn't always daven in CHABAD. Moshe davened in some of the shuls of the town. So Moshe went to one of these shuls of the town to daven Ma'ariv. And he started davening Ma'ariv, and the shul finished. And Moshe is still in the middle of Ma'ariv. Moshe Chavegestellt Shmoneh Esrei, and the Gabba of the shul wants to close down the shul, shut the lights, lock the doors, and go home. So he stands behind Moshe and he goes, you know, whatever a Gabba does, I want to go home. And Moshe does, he's oblivious. Davening. And after 10 minutes, the Gabba is already, I'm going home, shutting the lights. And Moshe is davening. And after half an hour, the Gabba gets sick and tired of his guy. He shuts the lights of the shul. He locks the doors of the shul and he goes. It is pitch black in the shul. Moshe is in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei. Moshe does not know Shmoneh Esrei about that. Moshe davens from a siddur. And so Moshe, now what does he do? It's 11 o'clock at night. Moshe is davening Shmoneh Esrei. He's standing there. It's now 12 o'clock at night. He's standing there. It's now 1 o'clock in the morning. He hasn't come home. His wife realizes he's not home. She calls me, 1 o'clock in the morning. Where's my husband? Where is he? I said, I'll call CHABAD, I'll see if he's in the basement. He's working the project. I don't know. We check out CHABAD, he's not home. He's not there. Before she calls the police, she takes her daughter, they go in a car, they travel to the different shuls in the town, and they find his car parked outside of the shul. They go to wake up the Rav of the shul. He wakes up, the Gabba, they go into the shul, they open the lights. Moshe Shteich Shmoneh Esrei. He's standing there, davening, waiting for Eir HaBoker. This is Moshe. And the Rav says the story, and he says, I want to ask Mechila for Moshe. Again, we are the Rebbe's people. Understand this whole thing. We're the closest ones, right? We're supposed to be the teachers, okay? And these are the students. These are the ones that can't daven Shmoneh Esrei Baal Peh. What a joke. You understand? I mean, but this is, so again, no chalosim b'seifim, this is the whole idea, again, of Yitzhak Kislev, the whole idea of the Alter Rebbe, the whole idea of Mashiach, that ultimately that's what's the way the world is going to turn around. And we hope, pray, of them to Kislev, already see, take it from the yard to the Ula. Yom Tov to all.